Did you know that Wiki is the biggest search engine for holistic medicine? Dear viewers, welcome to our today's format visit. It's nice that you are back, and it's also nice that this show is so interactive. Today I would like to address the topic of the immune system once again. You know, we have already made a few visits shows about it. That means, explaining to me the immune system, at what costs does an imbalance occur? And there were shows in which I was allowed to introduce you to the actors of this immune system for the first time. The other was, what influence does the activity, spontaneity, power of my defense, for example, nutrition, have? Another was, what influence does my life have on the stimulation of my immune system? What causes stress in me? The other was, is overweight positive or negative for the power of an immune system? And today I would like to come to a topic that moves me very much, because we live in a century in which the world has already formed a completely different environment than it did 100 years ago. And in this environment, we live. But we have also created this environment. And in the end, the quality of this environment also has an influence on our defense, on our immunity. And I would like to discuss this with you today, or rather, I would like to analyze it a little today. And what I don't care about at all is to spread fear and worry in any way. Because we had enough of that for 2 years. And that's how we humans have maneuvered ourselves into an unbelievable vulnerability. That means it's just about now, really, without worry and without using the word fear in any form, just to open up and just give them thought impulses in order to actually only march through life with open eyes and consciously. That would be my wish. Of course, I am already in a certain advantage, because life wants to be understood. And what is life at all? What makes life? What is life? I have been dealing with this for 30 years and went into the time 2 years ago with an incredibly great relaxation and tried to transfer this relaxation over. Through awareness, through knowledge, through consciousness. Because if you have that, then you become calmer, because then you can calmly decide. And every now and then I hear from people that no matter what burdens they are under, and of course today we have a lot to do with toxins in the environment. I also have a genetic disposition for a bad detoxification. That is already true. And what I observe is immense, great, to deal with this weakness with a toxic burden. But our genes are not our destiny at all. I have the impression that only through the fact that to know this now, again and again, has the proof, black on white, that you could get sick and are sick now. Certainly, we will all be expected with a certain card deck in the world, and we have all our individual requirements in this world of strong or with a certain weakness to face the burden of life. But to what extent the environment takes influence on that, that is the crucial point. And by that, I do not mean exclusively only toxic and environmentally toxicological. But I also mean the entire environment in which I move, in which I grow up. Our immune system, I cannot directly influence that in a form. The immune system is so filigree, a system which is in harmony with each other. And I would like to use the term of cosmic intelligence, because it is not to be underestimated. Maybe a later artificial intelligence will understand this, but as a human being, I believe that the more we understand from year to year about the mechanisms of togetherness and for each other only in close proximity, I think we will notice how little do we actually know about it. And it is not only the climate that changes, it is not only the weather that changes, it is also the sleep. Do I have a lot of sleep? Do I have little sleep? Do I have stress? Or how is my daily diet actually? What does it consist of? So we have to become much more aware, and we also have to look at it. We have to understand it. We have to recognize dangers. And if we know, then we can consciously decide. And that is what the channel QS24 is always living in a huge concern. Namely, to present to you people an authenticity, who have already gone through these processes and have, of course, dealt with these individual topics incredibly much. And you are the clientele that will, of course, benefit from it. Let's go back to my genes. Genes are really raw material. That means having the equipment of the genes do not mean anything at all for a long time. I recently read a very interesting report, and I can still remember that this child was also in the press at the time. And this child had a trisomy 21. This is really a gene defect. And you know, all these children who actually spend their whole lives in the care of people. This child has developed a chromosome damage. And I found it incredibly interesting, this report, that this little girl, who was diagnosed with a Down syndrome, the child was diagnosed in the development, when she was born, as an embryo, and then in the 9 months of this mother's pregnancy, a large conflict took place. Participation in a conflict. This may now feel a little overwhelming for some or the other, but this is chromosomal. Gene defect arose at a time when the parent's house and also the child in which it lived were living under a permanent high-grade noise pollution. This fact was eroded, and the parents had a precaution for the little girl. That never again, as long as the child was in her environment, the drama of this volume made clear. This child was always protected from too strong, acoustic, really, burden. This was dramatic for the mother at that time in the context of this event of weeks of this family. I don't want to expand it at all. I just want to say that so much positive has developed with this child. This child has developed a completely different way than a normal Mongoloid child. I was allowed to work with Rika Harma for 4 years, and today I can understand which approaches he chose at that time, how he advised the parents. And today we are there 20, 25 years further and can observe what happened to a child with this genetic, heavy defect. Here it is something different. Here we are not talking about a hereditary disease, but we are talking about a genetic raw material in us humans. And we know that today everything about epigenetics, that both environmental toxins, the environment of a cell, whether it is toxic, but also psychological, are essential to the activity or inactivity of the genes. This is so important because it is the first question and the first targeted important measure: how is the quality of my life? Because I may have amalgam fillings for years. And I know that amalgam is not good. Amalgam is highly mercury-silver-rubidium containing neurotoxins. In that, life should be healthy, strengthen and regenerate every day with new strength. That would not work. On the other hand, it is my decision whether I, for example, have a fir tree in front of my car that constantly emits fragrances. Every time I drive a car, I have these toxic fragrances in my car. I do not know which drug-based chemical cocktail I take every day. 600 drugs have a liver toxicity. That would not work well. And if you just read this instruction leaflet sometimes, many say I do not read it at all. But it is important to read it because it is the, I would not say side effects rate. It is all the effects on my body because of this drug. It is not also here sometimes to avoid risk and benefit. It is not sometimes maybe in less a much greater effect. We do not create new diseases only by the body in its huge self-regulation, in its huge power every day to prepare for this life again. Then we do not create an incredible imbalance. But I decide that. Of course, in consultation with the one who ordered it for me. But are these questions not justified? For example, my gallery of highly toxic cleaning products at home. Maybe it is important to look at all this to see if this does not also influence my physical health. Alone in the bathroom, alone in the kitchen. What do I take to clean? What do I take to clean? What do I smear on my skin? It is my decision whether I dye my hair or not. Every fifth lipstick contains lead. Lead is in any dark black hair color. It is my decision if I have to have artificial nails or not. It is all formaldehyde in the IKEA furniture. It stings. It is highly toxic for my organism. Just because I may not see it or hear it or maybe not smell it, it is still there permanently when I buy a bedroom cabinet that is burdened with formaldehyde. This glue. It is my decision. Whether I use drinking water or buy it. What is better? I have to know whether I can use drinking water at all as drinking water, or what can I do this to improve the quality of my drinking water. It is my decision whether I now bring a pizza box every day or every 2 days in a styrofoam pizza from SFAS. I can explain it to you later. These are fluorides that really have effects on the human organism. Especially when I cut around with water because it is of course impregnated. The fat does not go in there. But that is not good. It is my decision whether I get a tattoo or not. And all this has a significant influence on the way the body has changed over the years, but also over decades. And that is why I am pretty relaxed when I hear again and again that I cannot detoxify. Of course, there is a defect. But then it is really not enough to bend things in any form, but above all to first direct your own consciousness to recognize these things and maybe reduce the pressure on your body. All that I have now taken out of the air, also the high question of the environmental toxic stresses, whether they are heavy metals or light metals such as aluminum, has a significant influence not only on the intactness of our genes but of course also on the frictionless activity of our immune cells. There are the T cells, the T lymphocytes, whose activity, also the macrophages, and also the reaction of the natural cells. They are always there to recognize viral processes and to bring them back into inactivity or to stop the development of an active viral load. That is what they are designed for. On the other hand, these natural killer cells, of course, also have to recognize the form of tumor cells. Every day, thousands of such tumor cells in a healthy human organism are produced. But whether they even have a chance to multiply or whether they are immediately recognized by immunity, that depends on how far you lead your own life. That is why I am saying I have to support my immune system. I am taking vitamin C, I am taking zinc, I am taking this and that is all good. You can do everything. Everything is wonderful. But is it enough? We know today that we also significantly weaken immunity through WLAN, through electrosmoke, through microwave pollution. There are many people who want to know nothing about it even today. Everything is clinical, study-wise, for the people completely okay. No, no, no. Not anymore. On the other hand, diseases arise when we have to say red light is already shining. A little more humility and respect for a life which also wants to be protected. We know today that only a short-term time, even passive contact with a smoker, the reactionability of the macrophages. Macrophages are those who clean up everything in our blood. The granulocytes are the white blood cells. I can explain it to you. They are those who are ready in the first defense. Viruses, bacteria, and fungi really clean up. But macrophages will then clean up all this garbage. The whole cascade of cytokines is significantly weakened by nicotine. My understanding of how should I say it, my condolences to someone who has become very sick, and I hear that he smoked his whole life. I have to say now, with courage and with a lot of self-responsibility, please accept this condition now. Because not everything will be able to go back again. The body has a certain convalescence. It has a great regenerative power. But you must not really play it until the end. Think of the many phthalates. Phthalates are softeners. Softener is both in washing but also a lot of children's toys. When you introduce it from overseas, it all leads to respiratory diseases, to health damage, and you really have to be interested in things. Softener as a plastic. We cannot imagine our life without art and plastic at all. The question here is to make a decision will not go black and white. There are many also in the whole medical technology high-quality instruments which, by many PVC layers but also through PFAS, through many fluorescent connections, are stability and strength and really longevity secure. You have to weigh today how far you can rely on these artificial materials. Of course, there will be a huge area. Especially PVC 90% is contained in these softener or these phthalates in cables, in foils. What did we do before when we had no foil? We took a paper or we just covered it and put it in the refrigerator. All the sockets, all the carpets, all the sports and leisure items. These are all things that in our present time, but also on the health situation of us humans, especially in the context of toxic load, are incredibly serious. We have hormone disruptors. They are called xenohormones or bisphenol A, that is the softener in the plastic bottles. We know today, and we measure that too, that bisphenol A, the increase in hormones active tumors are to rely on it. So it's not just that these really estrogen analogists who lead to the increase. Colon carcinoma or also breast cancer on the one hand, of course, have a high receptor binding. Every cell binds via the receptor estrogen, and there the receptor cannot suddenly know that now a so-called xenohormone, or is it the estrogen that I expect in the framework of all over the estrogen necessary positive properties for the health of a human cell. These are things that we today really highly assess, and when we talk about the health of my immune system, then we should really deal with these things. Autoimmune diseases like rheumatic arthritis, lupus erythematosus, psoriasis, lupus erythematosus, or the thyroid disease Hashimoto's. We were able to count them with two hands years ago. Today we have far over 170 at 200 autoimmune diseases, and autoimmune diseases are not immune weakness, but the immune system is misguided. We will be in one of the next broadcasts also talk about why is the system sometimes too weak? Why can it not perform? Why is it misguided? What is the cause that it is so disoriented? Where is it overwhelmed? Where is it underwhelmed? Or where does it overreact completely? Then of course we are talking about an allergy, and today it is almost normal how many children have allergic reactions. Of course also adults, and we have a lot of processes that were still, especially in an emergency situation were critical to the whole asthmatic bronchitis we can today very well clinically equip. That is no question, but the question is always what is behind it and why does this happen with my immune system? And if we now take all the heavy metals or also formaldehyde, if we now take phthalates or a large number of solutions, that is a big section that we can of course also determines today. There are laboratories that can very well prove these toxic burdens, whether that is now heavy metals or light metals, aluminum, vanadium, zinc or zirconium, whether these are all herbicides or pesticides, whether they are the solvents, the halogen carbon substances, or also solvents from methanol. Or keton type does not matter. But one thing is that we with these things also in the framework of our intact immunity, I think urgently have to deal with them. Specifically alone in our home environment to decide much more consciously whether we now buy this or that. Whether it makes sense to continue smoking or whether I with less maybe doing more for me will always be the discussion. Said bio is too expensive. Well, what does expensive mean? It is in the manufacturing process already something else that I have another exploitation if I have the vegetables on a healthy ground grow and with it of course integrate it into a healthy environment, or whether I grow the vegetables quickly with it of course spray the apple 20 times, and I always have to be aware that what it hits of course with many processes are also overwhelmed. The dose makes the poison, says Paracelsus, and at the moment are of course things that we through an improvement in our detoxification performance, especially of phases 1 and 2 of the liver, again and again in these broadcasts a lot to discuss. How can I do that and the detoxification of the to encourage people to live in motion, to sweat enough, to drink sometimes? It is banal things, but the essential also reduces the pressure but not to decompensate. And now I come to the end by making assumptions about my detoxification capacity is bad, so I'm sick. Of course, I can get sick, but we know today from processes where exposures were 30 years ago. And in the framework of these high toxic exposures, have only after 25 to 30 years developed these diseases. And what we see very strongly in the whole question of herbicides, pesticides, and at that time the DDT, what was forbidden back then. These are generations who have now become older, and that is the pesticide burden of course over years and decades on the one hand has grown, but at that time with these burdens already as the first were confronted and in the framework of their life, then these diseases have developed, whether of ALS or Parkinson's or autoimmune events. What we observe clearly in a life age, getting involved in a life age that is not at all old at all, but the exposition times have also become much shorter. That was important to me at this moment, maybe just to thematize and every single aspect that is worth a broadcast, but it's me, yes, to conveys the awareness, and who knows becomes calmer, can better decide and simply weigh whether something really has Such high necessary value in life, or you might also say I used to need, but in the few is more. I buy myself now a mascara where I am sure that he is not burdened, or look in the corner rubric biocosmetic whether I might buy lipstick there. I am again and again amazed at how cost-effective these lipsticks are. But that's how you start thinking, and that's what I wanted to say today. What influence does this whole environment toxic burden actually have on my life? And now I don't want to stand up and say we all live here and what can we do and so on. No, we can't live in a glass ball. We have this life also with all the unbelievable, thus also possible relief in life, the comfort of communication, the movement of travel transfers, and all that we certainly want that, us people here in a certain way also not give up. But the price is pretty high for our health, and that's why I wanted to talk about it today a little more intensively. In this sense, I wish you a wonderful coming week, and above all, whenever you have questions, or I may give a medical advice from a holistic point of view. Then please send it to Visite at QS24 TV. I am happy about every single address, of course, not every single request. Even if not everything can be treated by me in this form, but I can also choose some, and sometimes the topics overlap a bit, so I think that in any case may be interesting for you. In this sense, all the best, and thank you very much that you were there again today. Goodbye.